You probably all know Steve. He's a great supporter of the organic community in Alberta. He is the operator of Little Red Hen Mills, just outside of New Norway, which is a 4th generation farm. You've been certified organic for over 30 years, which is incredible. And Steve also has a seed cleaning operation on his farm as well. And yeah, you've definitely seen Steve at a lot of our events. He's been a past board president. You're a great resource for videos, articles. You were also in our Soil Health magazine. You're one of our spotlights, conferences. And you've also helped us shape this event, which is really great and provides us with an opportunity that if this all goes horribly well,
just blame me.
Horrible. We can blame you.
Perfect. Because nobody can fire me.
Yeah. So yeah, I'll pass it over to you, Stephen.
Hey, thanks, Tiara. So I guess what we all find useful as farmers, and I think we all agree on this, is we learn more when we talk amongst each other and learn from each other. And that's, you know, I can pass my knowledge on, but it's always interesting to hear other ideas because we all build on each other's strengths. And so I'm going to run a very open format tonight. What I'm going to do is just go through some overviews on the industry, some perspective and perceptions on what I think is about to happen or has happened. And I'm just going to ask you, if you've got questions, please write them down and we'll address those past my opening remarks. I do have slides, but the slides we're going to hold off on because they're production specific. And I think what we'll do is when we move into those Q&As, we can break into the slides. I just want to give overview now and trying to set the tone. And I always, when I do talks, I always find the most valuable thing is to answer your questions. Because I can talk about, you know, production and all those things, but I find that there's always burning issues that people have or ideas that they want to present themselves that everybody can learn from. And so that's kind of the format I want to go with tonight. I think it's more productive and more valuable for the people that have joined us tonight, and we learn more rapidly. So when Sarah phoned me, I think there's a real concern in the industry across Canada on the prairies on what the supply of organic products is right now. And anybody that's been in the industry in the last 4 or 5 years knows the rocky road we've traveled in the price structure. Last spring was, you know, absolutely terrible in the grains market. I was getting bids below conventional prices for grains, and it was very frustrating. And but we've been there before. There's a young producer in the room, Dan here, and I used to farm his dad's land. And I remember years ago we were sitting on the swath, or you know, questioning why we were organic because nobody was paying for us for our products. We weren't getting the volume in the market. We weren't getting the prices, and it wasn't justifying it. And you know, I think at that point you come to the realization, why are you in what you do? And we both had consensus that we're going to stick with it. We're going to stick it out because we do it for the reason of we believe in it. We're not here just because the prices are better. And at that point, the prices were way worse. We're a very volatile market. Anybody that's been in the industry any length of time knows it's feast or famine. I always say that we're kind of like a camel. You know, we drink when there's water, and then we wait for the prices to come back, because as soon as there's a price in it, we see a lot of entrants, and as soon as there's a low price in it, we see a lot of people exiting. There's always a core that always remain, but and I'm not begrudging anybody in farming. It's very difficult when the conventional prices are so low that they're not making any money, and if we're higher, then we're going to have entrants. And you know, $15 canola last February moved a lot of organic guys out of the market. We never did get a hard number on. We had discussed that on trying to actually quantify how many people left the industry last spring. And certainly now with those prices escalating even higher, we're going to see more movement out of the industry because we're very high risk. We all know that. It's not the easiest production to do. And those are very attractive prices on the conventional side right now. That being said, I think most people on this chat know that the prices are rapidly moving, both conventionally and organically. I'm sensing a lot of panic in the market right now on securing long-term supplies by processors, by end users. Where this ends is anybody's guess. Obviously, the world situation has put everybody on edge with Ukraine and Russia, and the large amount of production that comes out of those two countries onto the global market is putting a really strong base in grains. The livestock guys are getting their backsides handed to them on high costs of inputs. You know, feed's way higher. all across the board, conventional and organic. It'll shrink the supply, and then all of a sudden there'll be no supply on the livestock side, and those prices will peak again. And again, those cycles, like I said earlier, those cycles have been repetitive. Where to price is always the challenge. You know, what are your bills? What can you move? And so, you know, when the young guys are trying to figure out where to put their calls and where to sell, when to sell, you know, everybody's got to worry about what their cash flow is, what they need to put the crop in the spring. You know, how hard is the bank knocking on the door? And that's a very difficult one to answer. And that's very individual and customized to each operation in terms of, you know, what do you need for cash flow? I'm fortunate I'm at the age where I'm fairly stable and I can put a little more risk in the formula. I guess the biggest question, we'll cross that tonight. I think everybody's wondering right now what to grow in this coming season. That's you know, if we should still be in organic, and then if we are, what should we grow? Is very, very tough to answer that question. Out of that, I just want to make sure out on the call here tonight, or out on the chat tonight, that producers are aware of some significant changes in the contracting structure that are going on right now. I'm not going to name names. I don't want to pick on anybody, but make sure when you're looking at production contracts, because they're handing them out now, they're starting to try to lock up production. They have done something to our industry that I've never seen before. And some of the production contracts don't have act of God clauses in them. And so for those that don't know, act of God means that if you don't produce it, if you have a crop failure, you're not responsible for providing that product. The canola producers on the conventional side were hit very hard on the prairies this past year, was signing up on the $15 February contracts, and all of a sudden, you know, getting 10% of their crop and having to buy out. Some of them were lucky to get 10% of their crop and buying out those contracts. Our industry has always been very fortunate on having the act of God clauses. I think my intuition is what's happened is the processors are on the hook with supplying a product to their end user, and they have no product to supply. So there's probably some huge penalties coming their way. And I don't begrudge that. I mean, nobody wants to see anybody lose money. As soon as you lose a processor, you lose another buyer. But that's just the reality where the market's at. So that's going to really challenge us to try to pick production contracts at this point if you want to lock in some of your prices for the fall. But I want to make sure you guys are reading those contracts when you're getting them, and making sure that those still exist. You can still sign one. I'm not saying you can't sign one, but there better be an offsetting price reward for that, for your taking risk. So be careful. Yeah, and it's really frustrating, I guess. Not frustrating, it's just a reality of the world market when we see, you know, a country like Russia and the Ukraine fighting, because I don't think a lot of people realize that Russia is the number one wheat exporter in the world, and the Ukraine's number 3. And if we lock up that kind of flow globally, that's going to hit all markets. That's not just a conventional and organic market problem. That is a global food shortage. We're heading down a path that could be very serious very quickly. To see these price movements, and especially in the last week to 10 days, Chicago Board of Trade took a drop on Friday, but you know, we're seeing 5, 6, 7, 8% price increases per day. Unheard of. I mean, that is staggering movement in commodities, and where that lands, I don't know. And on the other side, I've got friends in PEI, potato farmers, that are having to, you know, dump, well, I think it's 136 million kgs of potatoes because two fields were found to have a potato blight they couldn't export, and they shut everything down. And boy, that's a real impact in the food chain in North America when you start taking those significant quantities of food out of the food chain. So that's just a synopsis on the markets. On the production side, everybody that's heard me talk knows where I stand. I'm 30, I think we're 34, 35 years of certified organic production now. And I can't stress it enough. I think we always get caught in that spiral of the production spiral, especially the new entrants, the new growers, of not doing enough soil building. And we do right now, my operation is 50% what I would call green fallow. In other words, we're growing a crop and we're incorporating it, not necessarily green manure. Sometimes we're using fall seeded clovers, depending on the field and what weeds we've got. We're also doing mulching weeds. We got caught a couple years ago where we couldn't even get on the land. It was so wet. So we ended up mulching. And I've got a slide on that if you want to look at it. I'm finding the mowing is a very efficient way to retain soil cover, build some root zone, and actually on fuel, it's very efficient. I'm surprised how little fuel the mulching actually takes. Tillage takes a lot of fuel, and boy, oil was over $100 a barrel today. It's like, okay, now we're gonna have to look seriously at some fuel equations. So, and then the tillage tools, if anyone wants to talk about that, how to use a cultivator. I use a rod weeder a lot. Everybody knows my lectures on rod weeders. And the proper use of a cultivator, disc, plow, the Nova blades. We're all tasked with doing cultivation right. And there's never an absolute in cultivation. Ultimately, as soon as you turn the soil black, you run the risk of wind erosion, water erosion, and just being cognitive of your soil moisture reserves, your conditions, where your organic matter is, how much fiber you got. Some soils are never meant to be cultivated. I mean, there's some stuff that's pure sand, and I've farmed some of that stuff, and it's just very, very hazardous. So we can get into that too if we want to go there. One of the other things that's out there is right now, we got one gentleman in the room, Mike. He's got chickens, and it's kind of the other side of the equation. I think with the high pricing that's going on now, there's an opportunity to link up and network with possibly a feed consumer. Mike does organic chickens, and he's looking to try to figure out how to source wheat long-term with some price stability. And so, when we got rapidly moving prices, look at the opportunities to build relationships and build your markets. So just a heads up there. And if you guys really want to go there, we can talk about certification, but nobody likes the paperwork. and certainly if you have any questions, I'd be willing to answer them from my perspective. So that's the start of opening this up to a general discussion. I hope that cues questions. So I'm opening it up to questions. If somebody has a question, ask, fire away.
And maybe I'll let you know your stopwatch.
How to make
10 minutes and 4 seconds.
10 minutes. I got a 3-minute penalty. I'm gonna have to sit in the corner and.
Okay. We'll put that on the scoreboard.
So,
maybe we can make a scoreboard for the series.
Wait, I'm still working on the committee to provide a speaker's clock just for that.
Yeah.